think it first came to me, I was one of those people that kept seeing 1111. And friends would joke with me, oh, there's one of your 1111s. And I always felt it was a very auspicious happening. It was a confirmation that I was on a true path. And years ago, I think in 1987, I was writing my book, Invoking Your Celestial Guardians, and 1111 was coming in really strongly to me. And I thought, oh, dare I put something about the 1111 in this book? But I decided I would do that. And then I realized, as I was gathering how to explain 1111 in that book, I realized it was supposed to be a huge planetary activation. And I thought, oh, that's wonderful. I'll definitely participate, probably in my backyard or something. And then weeks went on, and I received more and more information on the 1111. And I unfortunately received the information that I was in charge of this huge planetary activation. And then what happened to me immediately afterwards is my back went out, and I was in bed, and they kind of carried me to a chiropractor, and he said, oh, you're going to have to lie in bed for a few weeks and all of this. But I knew, even when he said that, I knew that it was just my sense of shock that I was supposedly in charge of this planetary activation, and that had thrown my back out. And the sooner that I accepted it, the sooner I'd be walking again. Anyway, so I finally went inside myself and tried to make peace with it. For many years, I'd been watching people that went to the front lines on this planet, and most of the time they were kind of destroyed by it, and their work was distorted. So I wasn't really enthusiastic to assume this task, but it was sort of undeniable. It was kind of like my dance to do, and I knew I had to do it. So after a few days lying in bed, I made a complete total surrender and said, okay, even if I get destroyed by this, even if people mock me or ridicule me or distort, I'm going to do it because I have to. And so I made a complete surrender, and I assumed the task, and immediately my back healed and I was up again. So that's how it first happened. That's how I first found out about it. Then I started organizing the first 1111 activation and the opening of the 1111 doorway. And I realized that what this really was is a merger of two very different evolutionary spirals that were both influencing us at the same time. On one side, there was the spiral of duality, and that's all opposition, polarity, male, female, night, day, good, bad, all that stuff. And that was the one that was influencing us the strongest on the planet at that time. But there was also another evolutionary spiral that was influencing us that was less known, and that was the evolutionary spiral of oneness, that we're all part of one true being, and nothing separate from the one. And so I knew my task, in order to have a true activation of an opening of the 1111 doorway, was to find a way to bring those two evolutionary spirals together and to form a zone of overlap between them. And then that zone of overlap became the bridge between duality and oneness. And that's where we had to journey through, out of duality into oneness. And of course, to go into oneness, you have to be an earth star being, not just an earth being or a star being. Those are duality concepts that appear separate from each other but aren't. And we have to emerge as timeless true ones. So that was my next task. Then I realized that Egypt was where this first activation had to be. I'd never been there before, so I set off on an inspection trip and was taken do you want to go in each pyramid by yourself? And yes, of course. And then I was smuggled to the Sphinx, which you're not allowed anymore, at 4 o'clock in the morning, led by guards with machine guns, told to run from rock to rock and then crouch and hide. It was all dark. And I got to the Sphinx. I hadn't thought what I was going to do when I got there. And there were his paws. There was the Sphinx. And I thought, oh, now where do I go? So I was drawn to this paw. I walked up on the arm. And then on the Sphinx's chest, where his heart is you'll see in the photos, it's kind of like a bump. And I thought, oh, perfect seat. So I crawled over there, huddled. It was all dark still, and huddled against the heart. And then what happened next really surprised me, because I just felt this immense love from the Sphinx for me. And I felt immense love from me towards the Sphinx. It was like, oh, my beloved. It was that strong, and it was so beautiful. And I just lay there like loving the Sphinx and being loved by the Sphinx. And it was just an unforgettable, amazing experience, one of the highlights of my life. And then at some point, I didn't do this physically, but I did it energetically. I saw myself doing it. I stood in front of the Sphinx, and I stepped into my vast body of light. And then I brought out my wings, these huge wings. And then I was facing the Sphinx, standing before it, and then I brought out the Sphinx's wings. And then the Sphinx told me to climb on its back, which I didn't, again, this I didn't do physically, but energetically, yes. And it felt very real. And I climbed on its back in between its outstretched wings, and the Sphinx took off. And there in the distance was the 1111 doorway, open already. And we flew right in it and beyond. And that was one of the most exhilarating experiences of my entire life. It was just incredible. And then on the last day there, I'd been inside each of the great pyramids alone or with one or two people. The first time I went in there with two people, I had an experience in the sarcophagus where Thoth came with the scale, and did the heart and feather thing. And then, well, the other two were taking turns going in the sarcophagus. I sat in one of the rocks that used to be there. There used to be very magnificent rocks on the floor you could sit on. And I opened the 1111 doorway, and I just sat there as an open doorway. And all of a sudden, a whole procession of the Egyptian gods started to come towards me. And they were all wearing their ceremonial, and they were just rows and rows. There was a big procession. And I was going, oh, the Egyptian gods, oh, finally. And then they came closer, closer. I didn't know what they were going to do. And then they came, and they all marched inside my heart. I was holding open the 1111 doorway, and the whole procession disappeared within me. And then the next time I went in there weren't any gods. I thought, oh no, they've all disappeared. I felt really guilty that they were inside of me somewhere, merged into my heart. And on the last day, I went inside the Great Pyramid by myself at like 5 in the morning or 4. And the guardian at the front door said, okay, you have 7 minutes to get to the king's chamber, and then all the lights go out. Well, you don't want to be trying, if you've ever been in there, you don't want to be trying to get there and the lights go out. So I made it really fast all by myself. I got to the king's chamber, I lit a little votive candle, put it on the ground. I jumped into the sarcophagus, and the lights went boom. Dark. I was lying in the sarcophagus. I didn't know what was going to happen. And all of a sudden, this song came. And I'm not a singer. It had the great acoustics in there, but I don't think of myself as a singer. And I started to sing this song. And more accurately, I could say, this song sang through me. And it spiraled up from the core of my heart and went out of me, and spiraled up into the heart of heaven. And for 1 hour, I sang this most exquisite song about pure true love. And the song sang through me. And at one point I thought, oh, the lyrics are so exquisite. They're all like pure poetry. Maybe I should try to remember some. And then I thought, oh no, if I just stop like letting it sing through me and try to grab onto something, I knew it would disappear. So I just let it sing and go out and merge with the heart of heaven. Anyway, so then on January 11th to 12th, 1992 was our big ceremony at the base of the pyramid of Menkaura, which is the smallest of the three pyramids, but it's the only one that the stones look like Inca walls, and it felt very energy of An. An is the sun and the moon as one being, and An's been with me practically my whole life, even when it had been totally forgotten from history. I was like a detective of An, trying to find out more about it. And I discovered that it was one of the earliest gods of ancient Egypt, again representing the sun and the moon as one being. And so that's why we picked Menkaura, because it had such strong An energy. And we ended up with 500 people came from 40 countries, and we had 1 week of preparation in the ballroom of our hotel, and then we finally went to start our ceremony at midnight after a full day of activities. I don't know why we didn't rest all day, and then we started our ceremony, and we did 11 sacred dances. The main one of which we had at that time is called the Starry Procession. It's 22 minutes long, and we did it twice every hour. And then in the free time, the rest of the hour, new things would come. We never rested. We never stopped the ceremonies. And we did the ceremony for 38 continuous hours. We started at midnight. We danced all night, all the next day, all the following night, till the next afternoon. And there was we were one of the two master cylinders of that. Master cylinders are just like master cylinders in a car. It's where the energy first comes into the planet, goes deep into the earth, and then gets spread out to anchor groups all over the world. So we had one more master cylinder on the South Island of New Zealand in Queenstown with 100 people. And then we had thousands of anchor groups all over the world. Like the country of Brazil alone had something like 576 anchor groups. In Teotihuacan and Chichen Itza and Palenque, there were over 2,500 people at each of those anchor places. And there was one guy from the United States, and he thought, oh, I will go to Palenque that day and I'll take white clothes and I'll just do a ceremony by myself. And he was amazed when he got there that morning. There were several thousand Mayas all dressed in white doing a ceremony. So it really spread just by anchor group reports and talking to people that participated and how many were in their group. We figure 144,000 people participated, which is really amazing, especially if you consider that this was before the internet. I wasn't that well known. There was no way to spread the word quickly. I mean, there was mail, right? So what we did is we printed 130,000 little booklets on the 1111. We gave them away to everybody or sold them at cost. And they went all over the world. And then they were translated from people in other countries into 25 different languages and spread out and spread out. So that's how the word went out. And it really went from heart to heart. People felt it. And they felt it in their hearts like they hadn't felt something before. Like, oh, this is very different, but it's very true and it's very real. And we want to participate. So they either started an anchor group or came to one of the master cylinders. And so that was kind of a total miracle when you consider, we take the internet so for granted right now for quick communication. And this wasn't a time like that. And the reason we did it for 38 hours, which is really long, is we wanted to align with every anchor group at the key times, which were 11:11 a.m., 11:11 p.m. local times of everywhere around the world, and also at 11:11 a.m. and p.m. Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Time. And those were the strongest times of our ceremonies, when the Universal Time, Greenwich Mean Time, when everyone all over the world was doing things at the same time. And it felt like there's an ancient prophecy from the silent watchers, who are those guardians who watch the worlds within worlds, and they hold everything in positional alignment through the purity of their love. And they were watching for eons and were very well trained not to let go of their position no matter what. And it didn't matter if it rained or thousands of spears were flying through the air, or if there was lightning, or if they got hungry or tired. We were trained to just hold our position. And we were looking for one sign. And what that sign was is when two waves sweep across the planet, or when two wings go around the world, that's the sign that that planet is ready to go to another level. And that's what we were watching for. And in Egypt and all over the world, that's the sign we gave by doing the ceremonies for 38 hours. It wasn't easy 38 hours. We had one toilet that was in a bus parked on the far side of the pyramid. We had no food except for what we'd brought, which was minimal, like trail mix or chocolate bar. We had a few bottles of water. But the thing was, in those energies, we weren't hungry. We didn't even think about food. We didn't even think about toilet. We were just in this other, a whole different energy field. And the ceremony was what we were concentrating on. We also had 11 guardians at all times, scattered around the edges of the temple, holding the energy. And they do different things with their hands, whatever felt right. And they were grounding and holding the energy of whatever we were doing and sending it all over the world to the anchor groups. And when you're a guardian at something like that, it's quite a remarkable experience, because you're watching things that your eyes have never seen before, these incredible energies, this incredible sacred movements. And yet whatever you're watching, you're always vaster than that. So it's deeply transformative to be a guardian. And all night long for our 2 nights, we had someone in charge of the guardians, and he just made the rounds and made the rounds. And he'd come back to our one little microphone and he'd say, "We need 8 guardians." And people would either jump up where they were sleeping on the sand, or they'd get out of one of the sacred dances and they'd go with him and they'd replace guardians. And that happened all night long for our 2 nights. And I really honor the guardians because they were magnificent. And we even had, on the second day, we even had Egyptians arriving on camels. And there were some places where we did the ceremony where the walls, in the corners, the walls were lower. Parts of them had fallen. And you could see them sitting on their camels, like watching everything we did. Of course, there was no electricity there and 2 long dark nights. But everyone had brought 11 white candles from their country. And they were stuck in the rocks in different places. That was our only lighting. And before we left on the final day, we went, everybody picked up their candles and to take them back to their country as sacred candles. And a few Egyptians who'd been watching over the wall, they said, "Could we have some of your sacred candles?" And we gave them some of our sacred candles. And then we cleaned. There was not a drop of wax when we left Menkaura. It was all clean. There was no garbage, anything. And we brought musicians to play, but in the middle of the night, the musicians fell asleep, and there was only me around, and I'm not a musician, but there was a keyboard there, a synthesizer, and somebody had to play music, and so, and I have no piano training, nothing, and I would just play, and it sounded okay. Amazingly enough, I mean, they play better, but they were all asleep. And when you finally got where you couldn't dance another step, you had to lie down. You just excuse yourself from the dance, take a few steps away, and it was just sand. And you just go collapse on the sand, fall asleep for an hour or so, and then you jump, you'd wake up and you see the ceremony still going on. You jump up and get back in the dance. No, it was a really amazing experience. I mean, something that we've never experienced before or since. We've done all-night ceremonies, but nothing equals that. And of course the pyramids, and one night they had the light show in the pyramids and they'd all turn blue while we were doing our ceremony and change colors. And it was amazing. And the final morning at the 11:11 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time is all of a sudden, we were of course doing still dancing, and all of a sudden this huge beam of light, a yod, came into the center of our star and just anchored into the earth. And many people in anchor groups, when they started sending in their reports, they said, "Oh, and on the last day this big beam of light came in." And it was such incredible energy. So they felt it too. So it was the people that had the privilege, either in Egypt, New Zealand, or any country, being a part of it, all had deeply unforgettable, life-changing experiences. And that's the bridge between duality and oneness. Those two evolutionary spirals had created this zone of overlap. And we started traveling through the zone of overlap. And then there were 11:11 activations for the next 33 years. And these were always held in different parts of the world. And it was very similar to traveling through a canal, like traveling through the locks in a canal. And I got to go through the Suez Canal, so I had a direct experience of the locks. And it was so exhilarating. And the boat would go into this lock, they'd close the gates behind it. Then they'd put more water in the lock, making the boat go up higher till it went to a certain level, and then they'd open the doors on the other side, and then you travel on that new level till you reached a new lock, and then again you'd be locked in it, move to a new level, and proceed. And so these 11:11 gate activations were like that. Everyone had its own keynote and its own purpose, and it always took you to a new level. And then we finally finished those. We had our final 11:11 activation of 11th gate in Peru in 2012. And then we thought, oh, okay, it's over. And now we'll just go through the gates, because even though in a gate activation, sometimes you'd go through it during the activation, sometimes it would take a few years for you individually to go through it. So then we started doing other ceremonies. We moved to Peru in 2010, created the Heart of On, which is an anchoring place of the new reality. And then we started doing ceremonies here, and we did, for the last few years, we did 8 Antawa ceremonies. And they were specifically to bring together the family of On and to have us emerge as timeless true ones. And so we met some wonderful people that we love dearly. We kept the ceremonies small. We didn't want hundreds of people. We kept them around 40 or sometimes a little bit more. We always tried to get an equal number of men and women, which we did most times, which felt really balanced and good. And we emerged as timeless true ones, and with lifelong friends, and not friends, family. And then last year it started coming to me that there was the 11:11 doorway needed to close. And some people were really shocked by this, like, how can you close it? But it felt right to me, and I knew well that old doorways have to close so new doorways can be made visible. And so I felt the 1111 doorway was kind of holding us back by, there was nothing new coming through, and we couldn't go further. So we had ceremonies in several parts of the world, including the Master Cylinder in Peru, and we closed the 1111 doorway. And that was a year ago. And since then, I've had a feeling like, okay, I could feel the doorway beyond the 1111. And it feels really amazing. It's very sparkly and iridescent and very light. So then, several months ago, near the probably beginning of this year sometime, it came to me, okay, now we have to open a new doorway beyond the 1111. And I was seeing and feeling it more, and other people were starting to see and feel it too. And it came very strong that we had to start this in Egypt. So in September, you and I went with Nogi and his wife, went back to Egypt, and it was my third time there, and your first time, and it was amazing. I mean, Egypt is a very powerful place. It's a very true place, but the power isn't so much the pyramids and the temples, which are very strong. I mean, they take your breath away but the power's in the love of the people in their hearts. They have very strong hearts, and the love there is so immense, and the recognition of who we really are. And what Egypt does is it reaches through the layers of your being to the core of your essence, and it just pulls it out to the front of your being. There's no hiding in Egypt. And so again, that happened to us, and it was very interesting. Also, there's something that's happening this year is the evolutionary spiral, which are the two spirals as one now. We're always going around the spiral. On rare occasions, we start going backwards and down. Most of the time, we're going upwards. And there's certain times where you get to a certain position on the evolutionary spiral that's the same position that you were in years ago during a very important time in your life. And when you're in the same position but several spirals up, it opens kind of like a pillar of light that connects who we were then with who we are now. And it's deeply transforming. And this is happening a lot right now. The last few months just gotten very strong. And when we went back to Egypt, and I was back at the scene of the crime, so to speak, that's when I realized, oh, I'm in the same position on the spiral, but in a different level. And I became more me. And parts of me emerged that I didn't even know were there. And some I knew were there, but I didn't know how to get them out. So it was a very powerful time. We explored a lot of different places. We went to some of the places I'd been before, and we went to places that I'd always wanted to go to. And we found the perfect places to do our ceremonies next year, to open the doorway beyond the 1111. And these ceremonies are going to be sometime in the first ceremony in Egypt. The ceremonies are going to be in the first few months of the year. We don't have the exact dates yet because it's very intricate to land. And then I was all happy with that. I thought, oh, that's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be just incredible and feels totally right. And then a month after that, all of a sudden came to me, oh, there's a second set of ceremonies. And I went, oh no, how can we do that? And anyway, the second set of ceremonies is towards the end of next year, maybe September, October. And the ceremonies are going to be, most of them are going to be in Bolivia, and one will be in Peru. And so we went there in October and found the right places, and that's in the organizational stages too. And it might seem like a funny combination, Bolivia and Egypt, but I'll tell you later when we get closer to the time what the connections are, and I think you'll see why it's so perfect. When people come to Egypt with me, I have to warn you, it's not like a normal trip. It's not like a spiritual journey in the normal sense that many people do spiritual journeys. It's way beyond that. When I go, doors seem to open and amazing things happen. And in Bolivia, at the places we're doing ceremonies, at some places where they've never given permission, where it's impossible. The same in Egypt. And we always get the permission. I don't know how. They just know that we're real. And so we do impossible things. And they're really true and they're really strong because they're so real. So hopefully soon we'll have details and pre-registration information available. And as soon as we do, we'll put it on Facebook and Patreon and everything so people know it. We don't want this huge number of people like the first one with 500 people. We don't even want 100 people just for logistical reasons. The hotels are very full these days just for transportation, for sites for ceremonies. So we're going to do what we did at our Antawa ceremonies, which is have a pre-registration. If we don't know you, we'll have a Zoom with you. And we try to get a perfectly balanced group. And ideally with an equal number of men and women, and just a balance of countries, a balance of energy. And that makes our ceremonies even better. So, is that many of us since last November have been going through very challenging times, and I'm one who has, and but I've just felt that on the other side of these challenging, almost impossible times, there was a huge transformation taking place, and on the other side of this was an emergence, way beyond any emergence I've ever done, of my true being. And the other people that I know who've been going through really challenging times and major transformations are now at a point where you look at them and they're so beautiful and they're so radiant and so wise, and it's like it's their true being. And this is our best preparation we can do for these ceremonies, to be ready to do them. And if you're not able to come to the actual ceremonies that we put on, you can always be an anchor group, create an anchor group wherever you live, because anchor groups are really important, and it anchors the energies into the physical place where you live or where you're called to be, and you can't have too many anchor groups. And anchor groups, they're really connected with the master cylinders. You'll feel what we feel. You'll feel us and we feel you. And sometimes in ceremonies, if they get into a tricky place, anchor groups, all of a sudden their energy comes bursting in and just pulls us through. So it's a great work and a great way to participate. So we have internet now. So I hope that we open these doorways beyond the 1111, which are, you can feel them now, but they're still in the invisible. There's certain times they kind of come out a bit. It feels really pure and true and good. And we've worked hard for a long time on this planet to create a new true world. And I think this is the final thing we need to do. So I just want to give you lots of love, lots of respect, honoring, gratitude for being here, for being part of this wild, amazing 1111 journey. And thank you, Mwani. Yeah.